Picture this. The lights are blinding, the arena is packed to the rafters with thousands of screaming fans, and the air is thick with anticipation. It's the final stop of a historic tour, and the energy in the room is absolutely electric. The band has just finished their final encore, bowing to a thunderous standing ovation. The crowd is going wild, chanting for more, but the standard concert protocol dictates that it's time to pack up. The lead singer waves a final goodbye, the guitarist unstraps his instrument, and the stage crew begins moving in from the wings. But behind the massive drum kit, something unusual is happening. Anika Nilles, the powerhouse drummer who has been anchoring the entire performance with surgical precision, isn't getting up. She stays glued to her throne, drumsticks still gripped tightly in her hands. The stadium lights start to come up, the cue for the audience to head toward the exits. Yet, instead of standing up to join her bandmates for a final bow, Anika stares straight ahead, her face a mask of intense focus. The stage manager frantically signals to her from the side, pointing at his watch. The rest of the band turns around, visibly confused. The crowd's cheers morph into a collective, puzzled murmur. Why is she refusing to leave? What happens next would catch everyone completely off guard, turning a standard concert finale into a moment that would immediately go viral across the globe. To understand why Anika stayed on that stage, we have to look back at the incredible, unconventional journey that brought her to this exact moment. Long before she was a viral sensation commanding stadium-sized crowds, Anika Nilles was just a kid growing up in Aschaffenburg, Germany, surrounded by music. Her father was a drummer, so the rhythmic thumping of bass drums and the crisp snap of a snare were practically the soundtrack to her childhood. It didn't take long for the rhythm to get in her blood. By the time she was 6 years old, she was already messing around on the kit, trying to mimic the beats she heard at home. But here's the thing about Anika's story that shocks most people. She didn't take the traditional path of a child prodigy. She didn't graduate from a prestigious conservatory in her teens, nor was she picked up by a major touring act right out of high school. In fact, for a long time, music took a back seat. As she entered adulthood, life happened. The dream of becoming a professional musician started to feel less like a realistic career path and more like a distant childhood fantasy. To pay the bills, Anika took a completely normal, stable job. She became a social worker, dedicating her days to helping others while her drums sat in the background, waiting for the moments she could spare after a long shift. For years, she lived a dual life. By day, she was navigating the challenges of social work. By night, she was in her practice room, pouring every ounce of her leftover energy into the drum kit. She wasn't just playing for fun either. Anika was obsessed with technique, groove, and a highly complex musical concept known as quintuplets, a five-note grouping that most standard pop and rock drummers rarely touch. She was developing a completely unique voice on the instrument, entirely in secret. But as the years ticked by, a nagging feeling grew louder. She was approaching her late 20s, an age where many in the music industry imply that if you haven't made it yet, you never will. She faced a brutal choice: play it safe with her stable career, or risk everything for a one-in-a-million shot at her dream. Driven by a sudden wave of clarity, Anika made her move. She officially quit her stable job, leaving the safety of her career in social work behind. At an age when many musicians are already burning out, she decided to fully commit herself to the drums. She began auditioning for prestigious music universities, but her unconventional path hit a brutal roadblock. During one major audition, the judges literally laughed at her nerves. Because she was entirely self-taught up to that point, she didn't even know basic industry terminology like buzz rolls or paradiddles. She completely crashed and burned, leaving the audition room feeling like an absolute fraud. But Anika refused to let a single failure define her. Instead, she locked herself in a practice room, covering the windows with paper so no one could see or hear her make mistakes. She practiced until her hands bled, mastering the complex polyrhythms, independent rhythms played simultaneously, that she had always loved. Then, she decided to take her destiny into her own hands. In 2013, she recorded a video of herself playing her original track, Wild Boy, and posted it to YouTube. She went to sleep expecting nothing, but when she woke up, the internet had exploded. Virtually overnight, the video racked up millions of views. Global drum manufacturing giants were suddenly blowing up her phone, desperate to sponsor her. She had defied the odds, transitioning from an unknown preschool teacher to an international drumming sensation. Yet, none of this internet fame could have prepared her for the terrifying phone call that would alter the course of her life forever. That life-altering moment arrived in late 2025. By this time, Anika had firmly established herself as an elite modern clinician and a progressive fusion powerhouse, but nothing in her viral solo career could prepare her for a phone call from the inner circle of rock royalty. On the other end of the line was the camp of surviving members Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson. They were planning something the world thought was completely impossible, a 2026 reunion tour celebrating 50 years of the legendary progressive rock band Rush. The weight of this invitation was staggering. Following the tragic passing of Neil Peart in 2020, widely considered one of the greatest, most technically flawless drummers in rock history, Rush had remained entirely silent. Stepping into Neil's shoes wasn't just a regular gig, it was a high-stakes tightrope walk. Rush fans are notoriously protective, fiercely analytical, and deeply emotional about the band's legacy. To make matters even more intense, Anika admitted she wasn't even a hardcore Rush fan when she got the call. She had to learn their infamously complex, time-signature shifting catalog practically from scratch. When she walked into the high-pressure audition room, she knew she had to win over two rock legends who had spent over 40 years sharing a stage with a master. But the moment she picked up her sticks, the room shifted. Anika didn't just play the songs, she embodied them. Her deep mastery of polyrhythms and odd time signatures, the exact skills she had developed during those grueling hours in her locked practice room, allowed her to navigate Neil Peart's legendary parts with a stunning mix of reverence and fresh energy. When she finished the audition, Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson exchanged a look of pure awe. They had found their drummer. When the 2026 reunion tour was officially announced, the internet nearly broke. Skeptical fans wondered if anyone could truly do justice to the band's legacy. But from the very first opening note of the tour, Anika silenced every single doubter. Night after night, she delivered flawless, high-octane performances, earning nightly standing ovations from packed arenas of die-hard fans. Which brings us right back to that unforgettable final night of the historic tour. As the rest of the band exited the stage and the house lights flickered on, Anika remained firmly planted on her drum throne. The stage manager was waving frantically from the wings, terrified that a technical glitch or a medical emergency was unfolding in front of thousands of people. The crowd's cheers faded into a tense, breathless silence. Suddenly, Anika raised her sticks high into the air. Instead of walking off, Anika brought her sticks down with explosive force, launching into a ferocious, unscripted drum solo. It wasn't a mistake, and it wasn't a glitch. It was a deeply personal, surprise tribute to the late Neil Peart. She seamlessly wove together iconic snippets of his most famous solos, incorporating his signature cowbell patterns and sweeping cymbal crashes. As the realization washed over the crowd, the arena erupted into an absolute frenzy. Grown men in the front row were openly weeping. Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson walked back out onto the stage, standing in the wings with massive smiles, watching their new bandmate completely command the room. Anika ended the solo with a thunderous roar from the bass drums, threw her sticks into the crowd, and finally stood up. The ovation that followed was deafening, a collective thank you from a fan base that had finally found closure. From a social worker whose dreams were laughed at, to a viral internet star, to the woman who successfully honored a rock god, Anika Nilles proved that it is never too late to rewrite your story. She didn't just fill Neil Peart's shoes. She left her own permanent footprints on the history of rock and roll.